And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the Top podcast. I'm your host, Harrison Real, alongside me, co-host Dan Kiley. It's Tuesday on the East Coast. College football playoff rankings, week 2 are out. Not gonna lie, didn't watch a lick of it at all. Just pulled up the rankings on my laptop, and that's the first time I've seen them. So you're gonna get organic reactions out of me. I don't know about you, Dan. The weekend was great. A lot of good football. Can't complain.
I could complain if I wanted to, but nobody will listen. So what's the point? So let's go ahead and let's do that first. Let's do the instant reaction to the college football playoff rankings. So go ahead, Harrison. Do you have a reaction?
It's a whole bunch of nothing. It was probably 30 minutes of TV, just reiterating the same points they talked about last week. Because really nothing's happened. I mean, none of the top four is different. It's still Ohio State, Georgia, Michigan, Florida State. Nothing's changed. Washington's still number 5, Oregon 6, Texas and Bama are 7 and 8. Ole Miss coming to town, they're number 9. But yeah, I mean, I'm nothing here, Dan. There's really nothing here. I mean, Missouri's 14. Missouri's still in the top 25, which I think rightfully so. Tennessee at 13. Maybe that's a top 10 matchup here in a week. I don't know. But I mean, this was probably just a waste of time.
Yeah, it is a complete waste of time. And the only thing that I thought was possible was maybe there was movement with Ohio State at number 1 because they played a absolutely garbage, terrible Rutgers team. And I know what the score says, but that's not any indication of what that game was. And if you watched it, most of the people who watched the Georgia game, you should have watched some of it because it was right on before our game. But I mean, Rutgers had a chance to go in and tie the game, and I can't remember exactly what it was. Was it a fumble or an interception that went back the other way, like 97 yards or whatever, that really turned the game for Ohio State? But I mean, Ohio State looked really bad. Like, I mean, Georgia hasn't played amazing all year, but they haven't looked that bad. That's just my opinion. But that was the only thing that could have possibly changed anything. For the most part, everything's the same. So, I mean, and Georgia now has a top 10 matchup.
To me, just from what this committee has shown through 2 weeks,
who's on the committee? Do we know? I know Michigan's AD is one of them.
You asked the wrong person, buddy. I know it is public information. You can Google it. There are names out there, but to me, Dan, the committee has shown one thing so far, and it's the eye test doesn't matter. It is resume based. First and foremost, resume based. What ranked teams have you beaten? Who have they beaten? All this and that. And then it's head to head. Have you beat anybody head to head? And then after that, it's just strength of schedule. It is legit just strength of schedule. We don't care how you win. It's just if you win. If you win, you're in. And I don't know. I mean, it's interesting to me to see how this all ranks out because you said it in our private conversation today. It feels like they want 2 Big Ten teams in the college football playoff. Right now, it's looking that way. I mean, they ain't going to budge on Ohio State at number 1. Looks like Georgia's solidly at number 2. Maybe that changes after this weekend or next in the next 2 weeks. But right now, it's a whole bunch of nothing. Complete waste of time. Me and you didn't even want to spend much time talking about it. Just instant reactions. I didn't watch it, Dan. I didn't watch the broadcast. I didn't watch the unveiling. Like I said, just came on here. I don't know about you, bud, but I mean, if you watched the broadcast, was there anything I missed? Any intriguing analysis before we move on to hot topics?
I don't need the pomp and circumstance. Just show me where they are. That's, I mean, like I said, like as long as the right 4 teams are in, the order doesn't necessarily matter that much to me. Because here's the thing, and this is what they have said year in and year out, that the rankings today don't matter for the rankings next week. They could put Georgia at 9 and Washington at 1 next week, and they don't have to have a reason. They have said that every ranking set is independent of one another. How did this team jump this team, and that's been the case since the CFP was created. And that is the standard that the voting public goes in, the voting group goes into the room with. It's one of their edicts is that what teams were ranked last week that shouldn't be relevant to you, right? It should be just producing the top 4 every single week. So, Jonathan says, If they don't matter, then why don't you talk? Why are you talking about it? It's because ultimately they don't matter because, like I just said, they can. It's arbitrary. They can do any top four they want. They don't have to have a reason. And last week's standings are irrelevant because by their bylaws, that's the way it's designed. So, I mean, in theory, they don't matter, right? I
Not. I mean,
think that if it's in the bylaws that last week's rankings don't have any bearing on this week's rankings, then by definition they don't matter.
like you said, Dan, just a few minutes ago. Right now, until selection day, it's all pomp and circumstance.
Yeah,
That's just what it is.
It's just
It's
a
pomp
TV
and
show.
circumstance. It's a TV show. So, but hey, we're gonna discuss them because there's people who listen that want to have them discuss. So we're gonna give our take on it, whether we think it mattered or not. Just like when the college football playoffs expands, Dan and I are gonna talk about it, even though we don't want it to expand. We got to talk about it. It's a storyline within college football. Dan, hot topic. You have an interesting angle in this one, so I'm gonna let you take it away.
So one of the byproducts of conference expansion and people moving around and joining different conferences, and it's ironic that the Big 12 is going away and or the Pac-12 is going away, and this is such a banner year for them. But there was an interesting video that I saw today, and it was talking about new life of joining a new conference could potentially awaken a sleeping giant. And then that got us to talking. And the team that they used for the purposes of this discussion was SMU. And before you roll your eyes and say whatever, SMU is joining the ACC. SMU raised $100 million in how long, Harrison? 7 days. 7 days they raised $100 million. And if you say, "Oh, that doesn't mean anything," where, Harrison? Can you tell everybody where SMU is located?
Highland Park,
And where is Highland
Dallas,
Park? Yep, in
basically
Dallas.
Dallas.
It's one of the richest areas in all of Texas. And rankings are, yeah, I agree with you for the most part. Highland, Texas, one of the richest areas in all of Texas. And before you say it doesn't matter, SMU is the original cheaters. I'm not saying that before them nobody ever cheated, but SMU cheated at a level that we've never seen before and never seen since. The only program in the history of the world to get the death penalty, but guess what? It's legal now. They can pay for whoever they want, but they've never really had a reason to do it. But now they're in a conference where they can contend. They've raised $100 million in 7 days. Do you think that is the next sleeping giant to be awoken? And then we started talking, and we talked about how maybe Georgia was the most recent sleeping giant to be woken up, because there were many years where Georgia was just a ho-hum program, but they were never 100% fully committed. Like I said, they never jumped off the deep end of the pool. They would always be waiting in the kiddie pool. Georgia's fully committed. They're in the deep end. So who's the next team? Who's the next team to jump in the deep end? Is it SMU? Do you have anybody else?
Okay, so this is interesting because SMU, I just want to put them in a whole different category of sleeping giants because I just googled, Dan, sleeping giants in college football, and none of them, and I mean none of them, are like SMU. None of them. We're talking about teams here. I'm going to give you the list. Mike Farrell created this list in June. He has Texas, who hasn't won a national championship since 2005. He has Miami, haven't won anything since the early 2000s, anything like a national championship. He has Oregon, which is interesting. And then he has Nebraska and Texas A&M. Like, okay, the only program that comes close to the term sleeping giant when we're compared to SMU is maybe Nebraska. But Nebraska was relevant maybe 10 years ago. So, and to me, Dan, I get it. Nebraska's, I guess, I think they're a blue blood. I guess people consider them blue blood because all the success they had till recently. But they don't have the resources. Like, when I look at a sleeping giant, Dan, obviously SMU is a great one because, like you said, they're in a really good part of Dallas, Texas, where there's money around it. Another one is, and hey, the town that they are in, I don't think much goes on there, but Texas A&M. That oil money's something, Dan. Like, them dollar bills be slapping over there in College Station. And I mean, they're sleeping all right. They haven't been relevant since the 90s, I want to say. Maybe you can give them credit for the Johnny Manziel years, but they really, other than beat Alabama, didn't really do much back then either. So to me, I think
Well,
A&M's a good one because kind of like Georgia, once they put their money where their mouth's at, they could be a problem.
so I don't think Texas A&M qualifies as a sleeping giant because they're fully awake. The Johnny Manziel area, they expanded their stadium. I think it was like $150 million renovate. They raised $750 million in 1 year. Harrison, I mean, that's documented. That's not. I mean, that's like in the Johnny Manziel doc. I mean, they raised 750 million in a year because they thought they had a chance to be good. That's not a sleeping giant. They are freaking awake. They are all in. I mean, no other schools raised that much money. They doubled or tripled the amount of money any other school has raised in 1 year. Harrison, tripled
So
the amount. That's Alabama. That's Georgia. That's USC. That's Michigan. That's Notre Dame. That's all of them. They tripled the amount of money that any one of them have ever raised in one season.
let's go
A&M
to
is
the next
awake.
next team. Next team, Miami. Talk about a
Okay.
team that needs a
Miami doesn't
stadium
have
on
the
campus,
resources. Miami doesn't have the resources.
but if they
They
got
don't.
the resources,
They don't. They don't have a large enough alumni base. They don't have the money. Miami can't. I mean, Miami can be good, but they can't be a behemoth. They don't have the money. That's always been their problem. Donna Shalala, when she was the president down there, that was the first thing they went to is they don't have the money. They don't have the boosters. They don't have the alumni. They don't have the structure. It's a private school. That's the part everybody misses. It's a small, very small private school. Georgia's attendance or Georgia's enrollment is what, like 60,000 a year or something like that, and theirs is like 13,000 or 20,000 in that range. So it's way too small. Yes, they do have South
what,
Beach, which
what about
overrated AF.
what about Nebraska?
So I did see a recent article about them about how Nebraska is dead. Like they don't have like it's just it was an interesting article, but I don't. But I think that one would qualify. I'm not saying that they would or they wouldn't, but I think that one qualifies. I think that's along the lines of what we're looking for.
It's interesting because there's other than SMU, I can't think off the top of my head one that even comes close. Talking about they have the money. Here's one, and they don't really have any success in history. I don't even think they have a national championship in their program's history. But Texas Tech is another interesting team where they have boatloads of money. Go look at I believe they're rebuilding their whole football facility, sponsored by, I want to say Jerry Jones is paying for all that. They have enough cash. Obviously, they're probably the maybe fourth or fifth most relevant university in the state of Texas, but it maybe it's just teams from Texas at the end of the day. Maybe all the teams from Texas just
Jerry
have boatloads of
Jones.
money.
Jerry Jones is connected to Arkansas.
I know, but they're naming this Texas Tech facility after him, if I
Yeah.
remember correctly. So there's some way he got his name on that building, one way or another. But that's another program that they don't really have the past success to say they've been asleep. They've probably just never been born, if we're just being honest. But yeah, it's interesting to me. Dan,
The one that I would say would be that hasn't been born yet, but could potentially become a giant would be South Florida, the Bulls down in Tampa.
mm,
There's a lot of money in that area. They are building some really, really nice facilities down there, and there's a lot of kids are starting to get some interest down there. So I'm not saying it would or they wouldn't, but in my opinion, South Florida could be the one that's never been born to have the opportunity. But I think trying to find a bigger sleeping giant than SMU would be really tough. And I think, and I don't remember who did the article, but or the video today, but they did a fantastic job. And I was telling you on our phone call, I was yelling at the clip like, yes, that point is right. So yeah, that could be one.
just saw another article. They put in a tweet from College Football Blue Bloods. He has a sleeping giants ranking for this year. He has Nebraska, UCF, Miami, UCLA, A&M, Arizona State, SMU, Colorado, UNLV, and Liberty. Pretty comprehensive list right there.
Yeah,
Pretty damn good top 10.
I think I think we're missing the point of sleeping giants. You know what I mean?
I think everybody has a different definition, but yeah, I'm with you on this one. SMU's in its own category, considering what's happened to them. Dan's rant of the week. Let's go.
All right, so this one's very, very simple, and this is not a seething, yelling, foaming at the mouth rant. This is I just need you to calm down rant, okay? So this is spawned, and I'm going to pick on my guy Harrison, and we're going to get to in-depth coverage of the Georgia Missouri game for sure. But he sent me a text, and he said, "I think this is the first time that Georgia has been awake and not played well in the game all year." Because it's been my contention that Georgia, when the masses said that they didn't play well, it's not necessarily they didn't play well; it's just they weren't interested, and I've been saying that all year. So I've been consistent on that. But here's the thing, and I'm getting extremely frustrated because with this fan base, and I know that what we're doing and what we're going through now is mirroring what Alabama went through. And even to some extent, Alabama went through what USC went through, where they were winning in the most dominant team. It's just that you forget what a normal football team looks like. You forget what a normal program looks like. You forget what a game is supposed to look like, because for the past 2 seasons, you had an anomaly. What you had was a super team, a superhuman football team that was not from this earth. We had the most ridiculous levels of talent this program has ever seen, ever. And we had guys that we've never had before. I mean, I guess Jordan Davis, the closest thing we've had to Jordan Davis would be Stroud or Seymour, Hall of Fame defensive lineman. And, I guess the time that we had Stroud and Seymour would be the equivalent of having Davis and Carter. I think that's fair, because those two were as dominant as anybody in all of football. And, we just didn't have the rest of it, I guess. But if you watch this Missouri game, and we'll get more into detail, but Georgia missed a couple plays or broke, they made a couple plays. But that is part of a football game, guys. It's that you're not going to just beat a team's brains in on every single play. You're not going to win every play. They're going to make plays. They're going to score. It's going to be a back and forth. And, I understand that, like, you want to win, and I understand all of that stuff, but we have lost all perspective. It's like we can't just watch a game anymore and be like, damn, that was a really good game, and they played really well. No, it's like the other team is not allowed to play well anymore. It's that Georgia sucks or Georgia's not playing well. It's like maybe Missouri really was a top 12 team, and maybe Missouri has talented players, and maybe Missouri had a really good game plan, and maybe Missouri executed or out-executed Georgia on some plays. But you know what? Georgia was able to keep it tight and win the game at the end. I don't know whatever happened to watching the game and being excited for your team. I mean, we immediately go to Georgia sucks or they're not playing well. And the truth of the matter is, they're a really good football team. They're just not superhuman anymore. And I think it's time for everybody to get off their pedestal and realize this team is playing hard for the most part, and they're playing well for the most part, but they're not perfect and they're not superhuman anymore. Like, they are Clark Kent. They are not Superman. They're sitting at that truck stop and they've lost all their powers. And a big bully come in, and when he hits him, he bleeds. So I don't know. I'm getting overly frustrated, and I'm not picking on Harrison. With the fan base in general, they are so spoiled with the superhuman team that they just don't know how to react to a good football game. And I think that's what we had this past weekend, was a good football game. Harrison.
Definitely a good football game. And I didn't want to take anything away from Missouri. Missouri was a damn good football team. Really good football team. I mean, considering they went into Sanford Stadium, a place where Kirby Smart's only been beaten, I think, 4 times in his career. I think he's only lost 4 games in Sanford Stadium throughout 7, 8 years now. Whatever it is, I lose count. Missouri played well. Had a chance to win in the fourth quarter, ultimately threw an interception. But to me, that was not Georgia's A game, is my point. I'd give them a B. Like, Georgia didn't play their best game. Missouri played one of their best games. There's no doubt that. But, like, to your credit, this team's not as good as they were last year or the year before. Then again, what folks need to remember when they go on social media and be like, yeah, this Georgia team wouldn't stack up against 2020 LSU. Well, thank you. Okay, cool. They don't need to beat 2020 LSU. They just
We
need to
don't
beat
play
the rest
them.
of the field. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're not. You can compare them all you want to the past, but at the end of the day, they ain't ever gonna have to play those guys. Ain't ever. So, yeah, just my opinion, and we'll go ahead and transition right on into the Missouri Georgia review, because I do think we saw another instance of, and we had this conversation today, Dan. I think for the first time under Kirby Smart, to me, it seems like this is an offensive-led football team, which is exciting because we've been so used to. I don't want to say the offense was on training wheels because they weren't. Tom Monken kind of took those off, especially the second year Stetson Bennett. But this offense goes by how this team goes by how its offense plays. Not to take credit away from the defense. Defense is so good, still one of the best in college football. Statistics show that out and prove that out. I know it doesn't meet the past standard of the last 2 years, but I mean, I'm amazed each and every week with what this offense has continued to do without Brock Bowers. And it's going to make them better down the line. Whether or not Georgia wins the national championship this year, they can look back on how they play without Brock and say, okay, did we get better? And I think as the way it's shaping up right now, it looks like Georgia has gotten better without Brock Bowers and makes you feel a little bit better about their chances next year.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I think Georgia's made the best out of the worst case scenario, right? Obviously, I think everybody has said, would say from the beginning of the season, the worst possible thing that could happen to Georgia is they lose Brock Bowers. Well, that's what has happened. And now Georgia's making the most of it. But I do think, I mean, Oscar Delpa's played extremely well, in my opinion. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he's played terrible. Maybe somebody's got film that shows me how awful he is. But I thought Oscar Delpa's played really well in his absence. And I think he's, got an impossible task of replacing a guy that's incredible. So what he's been able to do in the absence of Brock Bowers, I think is commendable.
We just lost Dan. Just me, or did we lose Dan? Someone let me know in the comments. I think we lost him. Well, I think I'm just going to continue where he was, pick up where he left off. Yeah, Georgia's looked good without Brock, as Jeremiah said in the comments. Lad has had. Yeah, he gone. Okay, thank you guys. Lad has had 230 yards in 2 games since being healthy. And, I mean, Lad's been the guy. Like, we said it going into the Florida game. If we're going to play Lad, if we only need Lad for a few plays, let it be third down. And he's totally proven to be the third down guy for Georgia, which is so exciting because, man, that's the one thing I've been missing all year is Lad McConkey, of all people. Obviously, he had that injury that held him out for, I want to say, the first 4 or 5 games. And his comeback has been an absolute beast. It doesn't even look like he's missed a step. And talk about missing steps. I bet Dan's going to pick up mid-rant.
Oh, I have no idea where I left off. So
something about Brock. You were talking about Brock.
Was I?
Yeah, you're talking about Brock and how Georgia's played without Brock. And
I was just going to say Oscar Delp has done an amazing job of filling in for Brock Bowers. He had the impossible task of trying to replace Georgia's best player, arguably one of the best players in college football. I think what he's been able to do is commendable, admirable, and I think he's done it as well as anybody could possibly do it. And then also Lad McConkey. I see Jeremiah shouting out Lad McConkey, Lad's stats. Lad has been incredible. And, and I was going to do a rant on this too, and I'm not going to because it's too far. But I mean, just say Lad being a white receiver is blowing your mind because I'm over the code for white receiver. And Lad's fucking good. He's really fast. He's really agile. He does a lot of really good things, and he happens to be white. But I mean, can we just get over it? Can we just all collectively say out loud, Lad is white, and just move on? Because it's like the most annoying thing in the world. They're like, oh, he's deceptively fast. No, he runs a 4.4 sub 4.4 40. He's fast. It doesn't matter who. He's a damn cheetah. Okay, he's fast. All right. Oh, he just he shows up early and works hard. Like, oh, because he's white. Okay, I got you. Like, lad is a stud. Okay, period. Same as AD Mitchell was a stud. Same as whoever else you want to put. He's a hell of a playmaker, and he's just a hell of a just that's it. He's a hell of a playmaker. Sorry, I knew that was going to happen.
It happened, I want to say last year and the year before when he really broke out to prominence. Every announcer that did his game, almost every one of them said, yeah, former walk-on. I'm like, man, I love that you're adding to his story because that would make his story so much even better.
He's not a walk-on.
But he's not a walk-on, was never a walk-on. And that's what everybody wants to say he was. Just pointing, just proving themselves that they didn't do any of the work or any of the research because he wasn't a walk-on. He was an overlooked 3-star recruit that found his way to Georgia off, I think the story is he sent his videos on YouTube or they found him on YouTube. And that's how they found him. So yeah, lad's not a former walk-on, disclaimer for any announcers that may be doing their games. Faster than a mill ran running from the neighborhood pit bull. It's about accurate, Reeds. Dan, let's get general reactions. What were your takeaways? You can take us anywhere, whether it's offense, defense, heck, special teams. I'll let you cook.
Just general takeaway from the game is what you're asking? I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm. Or general takeaways.
All right, so my general takeaways is that the offensive line continues to get better. Would I say they're like the best offensive line in the country? I don't think I would say that, although I'm not really in a position to make that statement one way or another. But I think the offensive line has been getting better. I think, again, for another week in a row, I don't know, it was just the third possible week where it's very clear that Dejon Edwards is arguably one of the best backs in the country. He's not going to finish with the best stats in the country, not even close. But when the game's on the line, when something's important, that guy is clutch. He's and they were oh gosh, who was it? I think it was Aaron Murray. Maybe it was Aaron Murray. It was on 680. Was talking about he was buried on the depth chart. I think at one point he was like the 6th running back on the depth chart. And then if everybody was still healthy, he would still be like the 3rd running back on the depth chart. But, now here he is, our bell cow. He's far surpassed what everybody's expectations were for him. And, with Kevin Milton not being able to stay healthy for the duration of his career, he's been able to rise to prominence. And thank God that we have him. And I think he's just an outstanding running back. And then the other part too is Kenneth Milton is getting healthy and he's starting to run to his body. He's a bigger back. I mean, like sometimes you forget, and I know I did. I was guilty of it this weekend when they were. And now listen, those announcers got so many things wrong that I had to go and double check. But I think it's like 6'2", like 220, 225, something like that. Harrison, you have the stack. Somebody can give me his height and weight, but Kenneth Milton is a big back and, very powerful kid. And if he's 100% healthy and he's going to start chipping in to this workload and take a little bit off of Dejon, it would be great to have that 1-2 punch back because, if you're able to establish the run and run really well, then that passing game can just open up and explode. You can finally take those shots down the field that you really want to take. And we've seen that from Ole Miss, and we'll get to Ole Miss in just a few minutes, but that's just some of my takeaways on the offensive side of the ball, Harrison, that, we're starting to get a lot more balance in Dejon Edwards. God almighty, he is such a blessing to have on your football team.
Stats real quick, Dan. Kendall Milton is 6'1", 220. That's what he's listed at on ESPN. Obviously, you're pretty dang close. I'm assuming probably playing right now, he's probably 225, 230, if I had to guess. Maybe he's a guy that loses weight during the season with all he's running, but what sticks out to me when looking at the stat sheet for both these guys, they're both averaging over 5 yards a carry. Dejon Edwards is having a damn near 6 yards a carry. He's at 5.7, has 633 yards on 111 carries. And obviously he was limited through the first few games. I don't think we didn't see much of Dejon Edwards. His first game was South Carolina. And then after that, he just took off, averaging almost 5 yards a carry and almost every 5 yards a carry or more in every game he's played this season except for 2. He had 4 yards per carry against Auburn and 4.8 against Missouri. But I think we talked about it last week. The thing that's most impressive about him, Dan, is typically when you see a guy like him, everybody wants to assume, because he's not the fastest. He's not the fastest. He's not the biggest. So everyone's just going to go out here and assume that he's just a power back, a guy that's going to run you over. Doesn't really have that agility or that niftiness to him to make guys miss. But God, does he make everybody look wrong? I mean, he is making guys miss more than I think he's improved so much. His ball carrier vision, his ability, to wait, his patience to wait for the holes to open up, and then, I believe the saying is slow to the hole and then blow right through it. And by God, does he do that every single time. We talked about it last week. It looks like he's going to get stopped in the backfield for a -2, and he ends up getting like 5 yards. And you're just like, how the heck did he do that? He is truly one of the most special backs we've had recently.
So, it was interesting. I was watching ESPN and they were showing a couple different plays of the game, and they were showing how Mike Bobo, his one of his calling cards in the old days was that he would hit the home run with the run, right? And we really haven't seen that home run out of this offense yet this season, where those explosive plays. So they put it up there at a couple where they weren't blocked extremely well, but Dajon Edwards was able to make something out of nothing, right? And then they showed a couple plays where Kendall had a cutback lane, which he could have gone for, 40, 50 yards, and he just missed it. And they were saying that that's just probably a byproduct of not getting the carries that he needs, because he's been so limited. And they were talking about how you could see Kendall getting more and more confident. Like Dajon's already there confidence-wise, where if Dajon gets one of those holes, he's going to bust it for a big run because his vision is where it's supposed to be. Whereas Kendall is still progressing, and they were just showing there's one particular play in this past game, and you may know what I'm talking about. It was a run to the right, and he ran right into the back of his tackle, but if he goes to the left, there's nobody there. And all he had to do is put his foot in the ground, make the one move, and that's the play that ESPN was illustrating, that's where the home run is from Bobo. It is there in the run game. We're just not capitalizing on it. So, and we kept talking about that all year long, is that Georgia's building. It's like like a musical score where it's escalating. We have not gotten to the crescendo yet, or whatever, like the peak of it. And I think this Georgia team is getting better and better and more confident on the offensive side. We haven't even talked about the defensive side yet. There was some minor issues, but at the end of the day, you have one of the best receivers in the country to 63 yards or something like that, or no, it was 30 something yards. I can't remember, but it wasn't a lot. And I know that basically his production was done early in the day. So I don't know, man. I think this Georgia team is actually pretty good, and I think they're getting better on the offensive side. I think it's just getting better every week.
I agree with you. I think that they do manage to get better offensively week to week. I think they're building confidence on defense a little bit up front, especially. You're getting guys back healthy. Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins, man, I miss 93. He's just so fun to watch, dude. So fun to watch. It's nice to see him back. Julian Humphrey was pretty confident after the game that, that was his breakout game, and he's going to be the starting corner opposite of Kamari Lassiter. And it's hard to tell him no, because he came in. Dalen Everett struggled early in this football game. They bring in Julian Humphrey, and Julian Humphrey did it great job of filling in and stepping into a key role there for Georgia. And you're right. Luther Burden was held for 3 receptions to 53 yards, which one score. And I think right after that touchdown is when Georgia decided, screw this. We're going to have Kamari Lassiter trail him for the rest of the game. He's going to be his shadow. And, man, if Kamari Lassiter wasn't in his back pocket every single time that ball was thrown Luther Burden's way, I don't know what I was watching, because there was one up against the sideline. I want to say it was 3rd down, where Lassiter's right with him, like running side by side, and breaks up the pass on 3rd down. It was it was a go ball right up the sideline, just right in his pocket, Mr. Pickpocket right there, making sure he doesn't get that ball. Kamari Lassiter's hell of a player. I can't even believe, Dan, that there was Jonathan goes off on this. I believe it was back a few weeks ago. They put out, I want to say it was On3, somebody, or maybe On Through was aggregating someone's list. They put out the top cornerback in college football, and Kamari Lassiter wasn't up there. Wasn't even the top 10, which is ridiculous to think when you go see him on Saturdays, go, play his best football against a guy like Luther Burden. So, yeah, he's definitely going to be rising up the board come April. I have no doubts that he's going to be one that NFL scouts, kind of like Eric Stokes. Eric Stokes, retrospectively looking back on that 2020 draft class, I don't know if anybody talked about Eric Stokes as a first round pick.
No, it's his pro day. His pro day exploded.
Yeah. So then he exploded from the pro day, but his tape was always good at Georgia. Like, you knew, every Georgia fan knew how special Eric Stokes was, and it just took, some shorts and a t-shirt for everybody else to figure out, man, this guy's a dude. To confirm what they saw on tape. And I think Kamari Lassiter is probably going to be one of those guys. I don't know if he'll test like Eric Stokes. I'm not some eye test genius that can tell you, what this guy's going to run. I don't know. I haven't been doing this very long. So we'll see about Kamari Lassiter. But, man, I know his tape, for one thing, his tape's going to be special. Dan, I want to give credit real quick. Let's give credit. Brady Cook, what a difference a year makes. Like, I don't remember him looking like this last year. I know they had a couple big plays in the passing game last year that really gave Georgia trouble, but I was never impressed with Brady Cook. And he comes out here today. I wasn't quite sold on him. I think you and I both thought Georgia, this was going to be another repeat of kind of Kentucky, where this team has been put up on a pedestal, and Georgia's going to come back down here and, whack-a-mole them back down to where they belong. That was not the case. I thought, Brady Cook was, I don't want to take credit away from him because he played well up until this point and played well against Georgia, by God. Completed, as I look for the box score, completed a fair number of his passes, 14 to 30. Not as great passing as I remember. Then again, Georgia, I think, improved on defense as that football game went on. But it was really his legs early that really hurt Georgia. Had a couple first down conversions, had 10 carries for 39 yards, obviously 10 attempts scrambling. But I want to give him credit where credit is due. Right now, in my opinion, one of the best quarterbacks we've played. I think that Georgia's played. I think the best quarterback Georgia's played right now. I think the best one's still Spencer Rattler, but that could change here in a little bit because you're obviously playing Jackson Dart here this weekend. You're playing Joe Milton. I don't know if Joe Milton's going to rank in the top 3. It's going to have a heck of a full game to do that. But yeah, Brady Cook, credit is due where credit is due. Brady Cook played a heck of a football game there for Missouri. Dan, anything else before we move on to Ole Miss?
No, I do think the one thing that I did notice was when Drinkowitz said, and they caught us on TV, where he was like, they don't have anybody spying the quarterback. And that kind of proved out, and he was able to bust some runs. So, and that's weird because Kirby and his entire defensive staff is so amazing that it's hard to believe that would be the case. But they figured it out by the end of the game. They stopped it. So, yeah, let's move on to Ole Miss because this is a game that I've been looking forward to all year long. I love Lane Kiffin. I love his offenses. And, I love chess match games like this where you have a guy who's an extremely talented play caller and schemer. And, that's the one thing that we always talk about, and I know a lot of other people talk about too, is they love to see their coaches scheme people open, right? And Lane Kiffin is as good as they come. Maybe he's not the best, but he's right up there with everybody else. And then Kirby, Muschamp, those guys on the defensive staff, Schumann, they are equally as talented of scheming ways to shut down the most productive offenses. So this has everything you want. This is good on good. What we do best, well, in theory, what we do best is going right up to head with what they do best. And before we get into any kind of X's and O breakdowns, Georgia's going to have to score this game, Harrison, if they want to be able to compete. They're going to have to be in the 30s, the upper 30s, possibly 40s to win this football game. Am I out of school on that, or do you think Georgia's team can shut down? I just don't see a scenario which Georgia's team holds them under 20. I just don't see that happening.
It's tough because when we talk about the formula to beating Georgia, I don't see Ole Miss having the formula completely. Obviously, Lane Kiffin is a heck of an offensive coordinator, a heck of a play caller, and is going to scheme things up. I don't think he has the weapons on the outside to make this potential upset. And I don't want to discount them. It would be a huge upset to me if Georgia somehow loses this football game. I feel good that they will win this football game. But then again, it is Lane Kiffin. Georgia has not played a Lane Kiffin football team, and Kirby Smart's 7 years at University of Georgia has not once. So it's going to be a chess match, like Dan said. That's the best way to put it. It's the best way to put it. So the real focus to me, Dan, where this game is going to come down to, and it's fresh off of a less than stellar performance by Georgia's run defense, which gave up some yards on the ground, showed that they can be vulnerable at points, and you can pick up some runs, especially off runs to the outside stretch runs. Missouri had great success getting it outside, not outside of the tackles, getting to the edge, trying to capture the edge against Georgia's defense and getting yards. I had the stats. Thanks to Pro Football Focus, they had the rushing direction for the team. Missouri had 9 attempts for 51 yards to the left end, which is left end, according to PFF, is how they determine that, is tight end attached. So if there's a tight end attached on the left hand side, on the left side of the offensive line, they had 51 yards off those runs, average 5.7 yards per carry. But what I found really interesting, and I think what's going to show up against Ole Miss, is how does Georgia's interior run defense? Missouri didn't really test Georgia's interior because everybody says you don't run up the middle in Georgia. That's just the one thing you don't do, because that's where the heart of Georgia's defense is, where Georgia's defense is particularly strongest, is up the middle of that defensive line. They average 5 yards a carry in the right A gap, average 7 yards a carry in runs in the B gap, and to the left B gap, and to the right B gap, they average 6.5. Now, granted, there were only 2 rushes to the right side in the B gap and 3 to the left B gap. So we're not talking about a very huge sample size there from Ole Miss, or from Missouri. But you talk about the stretch plays where they're trying to get the ball to the outside, get the ball to the edge. That's where they had their most success and their most attempts. Dan, you know just as much as I think everybody does. They're all familiar with Lane Kiffin. He's a good coordinator. He's going to scheme things up. He's going to show Georgia some things they haven't seen before on defense. And there's no doubt in my mind with a guy like Quinshon Judkins that he's going to try and replicate that success that Missouri had off the edge. And I think that's going to be the biggest thing, is how does this Georgia team respond to what happened last week? Because that's what Missouri had great success in. And as we saw after Auburn, everybody said going into the Kentucky game that Kentucky's going to pull the upset because Georgia couldn't stop Auburn's rushing attack. Georgia went out there and held Kentucky to under 100 yards. I think it may have been under 50. Complete dominant display. Are we going to see that again?
See, I don't know. Hold on. Say that. You want to know if Georgia can hold them to under 100 yards of offense?
No. I was talking about, can they replicate that success, that bounce back performance of holding, not getting beat twice on the rushing attack. I'm talking, remember, you gave up 200 yards to Auburn, and you come back and you beat Kentucky, giving up less than 100 yards rushing. They have that bounce back performance.
Yeah,
to me, that's what this game comes down to.
Yeah, Judkins is a hell of a running back, and the thing is that he is. I don't want to say he's underperformed, but in a sense he's underperformed. But he hasn't necessarily been healthy all year long. And we'll never know the truth on how healthy he actually is. But listen, if they can have any resemblance of a running game, and they can run it effectively, they become extremely dangerous. And that would be my biggest fear as a Georgia fan watching the game is, if they decide to run the football and they can get any kind of success in that running game, that makes everything that they want to do is extremely dangerous. The thing that even though Judkins is extremely talented, the part that concerns me the most is the legs of Jackson Dart, and he's a tough runner. And we heard somebody earlier in the season talking about he's thick and people bouncing off of him. Jackson Dart is a big quarterback, and he runs hard, and he's faster than you think he is because he's so big, not because he's white, but because he's so big. You would think that somebody that size couldn't run very fast, but he does. And he can throw the piss out of the ball. Like, it's an extremely explosive offense. And, I hear you. saying you don't think that they can do these certain things, but I think Judkins is a hell of a running back. And if you don't think he's not going to be ready to play in this game, then you just don't know ball, because that boy has got this game circled on his calendar, because every one of those running backs, Harrison, whether it's fact or fiction, it does not matter. The perception is that this Georgia defense does not give up rushing yards. Again, whether that's fact or fiction doesn't matter. That's the perception. And you go off on Georgia's run. Yeah, I swear, if he puts up 160, 170 yards rushing against this Georgia defense, oh, watch his stock go through the roof. And if you don't think he doesn't know that, he does. So Ole Miss has got this one circled. Lane's going to have something dialed up. It's going to be a hell of a football game. I'm really, really, really excited for this football game. And this is why I don't like being solo screen, because then you're just gone.
No, I'm good. I'm pulling up stats over here, and we got ESPN playing ads, even though it's paused. Good Lord. Always got to make money, even when I'm not even trying to give you. Anyways, yeah. Quishon Judkins is definitely one of the best backs coverage. I'm not Dan. Just clear this up. I was not downing Quishon Judkins whatsoever. I was saying what they did earlier. They had a down day against Auburn. Gave up rushing yards. Gave up 200 yards rushing. You come back a week or two later, you have a better performance against Kentucky. Like, Georgia responded. Georgia heard the talk just as much as Ole Miss is going to hear the talk about Georgia. Georgia's going to hear the talk about, oh, you gave up all this much rushing. They hear it. They hear it. That's what I was simply pointing out. But like you said, I think the race to 30 points, I do feel good about Georgia's offense. There's even better about Georgia's offense with reports coming out now that Brock Bowers, who just had tightrope surgery, I think 3 or 4 weeks ago now, I think it was 4 weeks ago, is looking closer like he's going to be ready to play. Anthony Dasher over at UJSports.com says, reported that he is potentially going to dress, was practicing in a black jersey. So he's in a non-contact jersey already this week over in Athens. Not best, hinting at there's a possibility he could play, hinting at maybe he could suit up and be available if Georgia needs him. But, having the no-contact jersey is the first sign, the first step towards getting back and playing on that football field for the University of Georgia. No doubt in my mind that this Georgia offense is going to score. I think that's the one thing that you can feel good about is if Georgia's getting into a shootout, they're going to be able to score the football. They're going to be able to move the ball and get yards against whoever they play. So I'm really excited for this football game. It's going to be a good one. Was excited for the Missouri game. Thought Georgia was going to get up for it, and they were. And hey, we're looking good for it. We're looking forward to it. I think everybody's looking forward to it because these next 3 games is really going to shape Georgia's season. You got Ole Miss, Tennessee, and then you got Tech. And then if you win out like you're supposed to, you're in this championship, potentially playing what looks to be a improved Alabama team since the last time they were on national television. So
they were on national television this week, or so. Yes,
since the last time they lost, I should say.
All right, so listen. The one criticism we've heard all year long is that Georgia has played nobody. Well, that is about to change. That is about to change massively. Over the next 7 weeks, you have this week against number 9, Ole Miss. Okay? So next week you have number 12, if I'm not mistaken, Tennessee, unless they were to lose. Okay? Then you have Georgia Tech. But then you have the SEC championship game, which would be number 4 or number 5, Alabama. And then you have a playoff. If you win that, then you have a playoff game against a top 4 team. And then you have a national championship against a top 4 team. So you're going to have 3 or 4 games against top 5 teams. And then you're going to have 2 more against top 10 teams or top 12 teams. So you're going to have 5 teams in the top 12 in the next 6 games. How's that for ramping up your schedule one time? Good heavens. Georgia's going to have to play really damn good football to come out of that unscathed. So that narrative is dead.
Yeah. Here's a take, Dan. I want your take on it. I don't know. You know my stance on expansion. I know your stance on expansion. Is there any part of you that wants a 12-team playoff this year, right
No,
now, with
zero,
what we've
zero,
seen?
zero, 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 zero. Because it takes all of the importance. Like we're talking about right now, Georgia can't afford to lose. Georgia can't afford to lose the SEC championship game. They might be able to afford to lose to like Ole Miss or something like that, but they cannot afford to lose an SEC championship game because that committee does not want two SEC teams in there. They have made that very clear. And listen, a one-loss Georgia team is not getting in, and they're going to go right back to the beginning part of the schedule and be like, "Oh, the schedule was terrible." They're not going to ever mention the back end or what they had to play. They're just not. So, no, I don't want any part of that 12-team playoff because it takes all of the importance and the critical. Listen, I want Georgia to have to win a national title. I want Alabama to have to win. I want Ole Miss to have to win. I want USC to have to win. I want Washington to have to win. I want teams to have to win to get in. Now look at the NFL. The Bills are one of the best teams in the league. They got 5 losses already, or 4 losses, or whatever the hell it is. I mean, what would happen if Georgia had 4 losses?
Good Lord.
But that's what we're headed to, Harrison.
Yeah.
I mean, listen,
the drama of this is gone. The drama of this is gone.
So if the byproduct of that was they said, okay, well, we can withstand 1 or 2 losses and still make the playoffs, right? If they said that and then they were like, well, because of that, we're going to go out and schedule better teams. And we're going to give you a real schedule, a real 12-game schedule where we play somebody every week. Okay, under that scenario, which is impossible, but in that scenario, all in. You're like, hey, listen, we're going to go to 12, but every week we're going to play somebody. I'd be like, okay, all right. I can tolerate that. But no, because they're not going to do that. So I'm out.
As fun as it would be to see 12 teams get in and to see, because the prevailing stance is that there's more parity this year in college football than there's been in recent years. And it's hard to deny that with the number of teams that we have in contention right now for the college football playoffs. There isn't one team, I think, in the top 4 that you can say no matter what they're in. I don't feel comfortable putting anybody's name in the bracket in a pen. There's not one. Anybody can slip up at this moment. I think if you want to talk about the easiest route to the playoffs at the moment, it has to be Florida State because their whole schedule. If you want to talk about a weak schedule, go look what they got going on over there in the ACC. They have a marquee win against LSU, and we'll give them credit for that. They beat LSU. But to close out the season, they're playing Miami, North Alabama. Yeah, North Alabama, North, South, East, West Alabama, Dan, and Florida to end the year. So that's probably the easiest. And then you also got the ACC Championship, who I don't know who they're going to play over there. But we're talking about the easiest path. They got it. Talking about the hardest path. I don't feel like it's out of the question to say Georgia's up there as in terms of what's left remaining on the schedule, because no matter what, no matter how bad everybody wants to say that Alabama team is, it's still Nick Saban. It's still the person that haunts dreams.
Where are you hearing people say that Alabama's bad?
No. I'm just saying, if there's people who thinks Alabama's bad,
well, they're stupid.
Still Nick Saban.
So the end. Like, if you think Alabama's a bad football team, you're stupid. So just stop watching sports. Thanks.
But you also got the Pac-12, and I think anybody in the Pac-12 has a pretty tough remaining schedule as well. Obviously, Washington might have to face Oregon again. College football is fun with 4 teams. Okay, for my opinion, and we're gonna wrap this thing up because we're talking about expansion and we're in dang college football season. 8 teams, fine. 12, come on, bro. Come on. We don't need 12. Dan, it's prediction time. Georgia, Ole Miss. What do you say?
I mean, listen, my prediction last week was awful. I was way off. I don't know. I think this was like 38-34. That's what I'm going to go with. That's what I feel like. 38-34. I think it's going to be a close game. I just don't see Georgia blowing them out. Hopefully I'm wrong. The reverse Dan jinx sometimes is a real thing.
It's tough, dude. I mean, we've been made to look so stupid with these score predictions
Oh,
that I
we've
almost
gotten
told you
some close.
we've gotten some close. And I will say that we've gotten close. But last year we each had like a game or two or three where we were basically on the money, like within a point or two where we were on the money. This year there ain't no telling. Man, I'm gonna go 31-20. I'm gonna say Georgia kicks a field goal at some point because that's just the way it has been. I'm gonna say Ole Miss, like Dan said, probably doesn't get held to under 20 points. In fact, I don't think they will. I think Dan has convinced me that they're going to score points. And Dan, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. Ole Miss first touchdown of the game, just because that's just the way things have gone recently, is Georgia lets up a touchdown early and then, takes control after that, after they work out the kinks throughout the game. So I'm going to go 31-20. Rest of the games, real quick, we'll rattle off some games this week. We got a marquee matchup again. Tennessee, Missouri. What is Dan Kiley's take on Tennessee, Missouri?
I mean, so for Georgia's sake, you hope Tennessee wins, right? To keep, but I don't know. I think Missouri. I was really impressed. Where's the game at?
It is at Missouri.
Okay, I think Missouri wins that football game.
Ooh. I'm gonna go Tennessee for this matchup. I'm gonna do it. I don't know. I mean, home field advantage could be a big thing for Missouri. Missouri has, in the midst of their best season since I think they joined the SEC, they haven't been this good since then. When they won I think they won the East 2 years in a row. I know they won it their first year in the East. Played for the SEC title, but I think Tennessee's gonna pull this one out. I just think Tennessee is good enough to pull that one out. Kind of like Dan said, you just hope that Tennessee wins the game if you're a Georgia fan. I'm gonna go with Tennessee. Last one, Dan. There's two good games I want to talk about. We're just gonna narrow it down to one. Michigan, Penn State. Hold up, I'll give you the home. It is at Penn State.
This is the first time Michigan has had to play anybody all year. I've been so excited to see Michigan actually play somebody. They have not had a close game. They have had no competition at all at any point in the season. I don't know if they've learned anything about themselves. However, I don't think Penn State's good enough to do anything, so I think Michigan's going to win. But I'm excited for this game because it's the first time Michigan's played anybody, like anybody that can give them any resistance at all. If Penn State can figure out something, then just figure out a way to make this close late. They might have a chance to pull it out, but I don't think Penn State has enough.
It's interesting. I'm looking at ESPN's analytics, and ESPN has Penn State favored. They have Penn State as a 50%. They have Penn State's odds at 50%, 50.7. Michigan's not favored in this football game, which is wild to me because, like Dan said, they've blown out everybody they played. Granted, they played Nebraska, Minnesota, Indiana, Michigan State, Purdue. Do I need to go on? East Carolina, UNLV, Bowling Green. They played absolutely nobody. Haven't learned it. Like Dan said, they haven't learned a thing. And for everybody to say it's a 1-game schedule for them, it is very much so a 1-game schedule. Maybe a 2-game schedule if Penn State actually gives them a fight here. But I'm gonna ride with Dan here. I think Michigan's gonna pull this out. I wasn't impressed with Penn State in the games I've watched. In the game I watched them play, which was Ohio State, they didn't really great pass the eye test for me. I'm gonna pick Michigan to win this football game because I don't know if Penn State can score the amount of points they need to score to pull the upset over Michigan. That's going to wrap it up, folks, for the Top Dog Talk podcast, episode 108. Should be a good weekend again of football. Going to be, hey, I don't know. Depending on how this Falcons games go, we may get another Arthur Smith rant out of Dan. We'll see. We'll see.
He's dead man walking. He's fired. Fuck.
We've already used one of them. We'll see. But anyways, folks, that's going to wrap it up. Make sure to like and subscribe. Rate us 5 stars on the podcast wherever you get them. Apple, Spotify, you name it. We're probably on there. I know Amazon has some podcast platform now that we're on. So make sure to like and subscribe. You can find Dan Kiley at Dan Kiley3 on Twitter. Me at Harrison Runo. Again, like, subscribe, share, rate, review. We appreciate you. We'll see you next week.
Go Dogs.